Picture this. Every single morning in the corner of a corporate parking lot, there sits a 2009 Toyota Camry, faded silver paint, a long scratch running down the side mirror, completely invisible among rows of brand new SUVs with shining logos and tinted windows. The owner dresses plainly, uses a phone that hasn't been upgraded in years, eats lunch at a cheap spot down the street, and never once talks about money. To his coworkers, he looks like someone just barely getting by, one bad month away from real trouble. But his balance sheet tells a completely different story. That man paid off his house years ago. His kids' college funds are fully loaded. His investment account holds a diversified index fund portfolio worth over $4 million, built quietly over more than 2 decades. If he wanted to, he could send a resignation email this afternoon and never look back. He still drives that old Camry, not because he can't afford better, but because he understands exactly what it truly costs to look like someone who has already made it. Research on American millionaires shows that around 80% of them are first-generation wealthy. No inheritance, no lottery ticket, no trust fund. They built their net worth on incomes that most people would consider perfectly ordinary. They didn't chase bigger houses, luxury cars, or upscale neighborhoods. Many of them have lived in the same home for over 20 years in middle-class or blue-collar communities where nobody would ever guess their neighbor is a millionaire. And the number that surprises people most, the wealthiest Americans tend to drive the most ordinary cars, Fords, Toyotas, Hondas, while a significant portion of middle-income earners are stretching themselves into luxury vehicles they can barely afford, one monthly payment at a time. When automotive data firms dig into vehicle registration records, they find something cold and telling. A large share of households earning over $250,000 a year still choose mainstream brands. They could buy something flashier, but they see no logical reason to bury tens of thousands of dollars into a logo. Meanwhile, a notable percentage of people earning under $100,000 are carrying cars priced at or above their entire annual income. Financially speaking, they are working for the car. The car is not working for them. One group looks like they've arrived. The other group looks unremarkable, but the bank accounts tell the opposite story. This is the point most people miss entirely. Every dollar spent on a status symbol is a dollar that loses its right to compound over time. Run the math. The gap between a solid $35,000 vehicle and a $90,000 luxury sedan is $55,000. Put that $55,000 into an S&P 500 index fund at the historical average return of roughly 10% per year before inflation, and after 30 years, that single decision grows to nearly $1 million. The day you sign the paperwork on the luxury car, you are not just spending $55,000. You are giving up close to $1 million you could have had. And that is only one car. Add it all up, the watches, the designer clothes, the neighborhood that costs more than you need, the dinners meant to impress, the vacations designed for Instagram. The total opportunity cost of a lifetime of conspicuous consumption is a number you will not want to look at when you are 60 years old. To understand why people keep walking into this trap, even when they know the math, we need to go back to a concept from the late 19th century. Norwegian-American sociologist Thorstein Veblen, in a book published in 1899, gave a name to the phenomenon he called conspicuous consumption. His core observation was that people do not buy products purely for utility. They buy signals. Luxury brands are not selling materials. They are selling a narrative. A $5,000 leather bag and a $50 leather bag both carry your things. The other $4,950 buys the ability to broadcast a single message to the world: I am not ordinary. The brutal irony is that the very need to prove that keeps you permanently in the ordinary group. Psychological research on money and happiness consistently shows that people who view money as a measure of self-worth and a tool for displaying power report lower financial satisfaction even as their income rises. They are not short on money. They are short on the feeling of enough. And when you never feel like you have enough, you never stop long enough to actually accumulate anything. The Millionaire Next Door, A synthesis of over 2 decades of research on wealthy Americans delivered a finding that many people find hard to swallow. Around 80% of millionaires are first-generation affluent. No inheritance, no head start, no safety net. They built wealth on incomes that most people would dismiss as unremarkable. Half of them have lived in the same house for more than 20 years. They cluster in middle-class and working-class neighborhoods, not gated communities or high-rise condos. The researchers themselves were surprised by this because they expected the opposite. The reason becomes obvious when you look at the numbers. A 2025 Wells Fargo Financial Health Survey found that 83% of Americans say they want to change the way they think about money. At the same time, 3/4 of affluent American households are actively choosing to spend less than they could in order to stay on track toward long-term financial goals. They are not doing it out of necessity. They are doing it because they understand that spending discipline is not a temporary phase you graduate from. It is the permanent foundation underneath everything they have built. The research gives these two groups names: PAW, or Prodigious Accumulator of Wealth, and UAW, or Under Accumulator of Wealth. The critical detail is that these categories have nothing to do with income and everything to do with behavior. A janitor earning $50,000 a year, who saves consistently and invests patiently, can out-accumulate a physician earning $700,000, who spends most of it maintaining the image of a successful professional. Income creates possibility. Behavior determines outcome. The researchers also provided a simple formula for a reality check. Multiply your age by your pre-tax annual household income and divide by 10. If you are 45 years old and earning around $180,000, your expected net worth benchmark is approximately $810,000. If you are well below that number, it is probably not because your income is too low. It is because a large share of that income has been going toward image instead of assets. Ask yourself honestly, where did the money go? The race to maintain appearances does not just burn money. It burns time and mental energy through a mechanism psychologists call hedonic adaptation. You buy a new watch. The first week you glance at it 10 times a day and feel genuinely good. By the second month, it has become wallpaper on your wrist. By month 6, you are noticing the watches on your colleagues' wrists. The brain does not hold on to the feeling of excitement. It only anchors to the new normal, and the new normal always wants more. This is not a personal weakness. It is a biological mechanism that operates in everyone. The difference is that genuinely wealthy people understand this mechanism and refuse to let it run their bank account. Financial security works in the opposite direction. It does not create emotional peaks that fade away. It builds a quiet, durable foundation underneath everything else. You know you can absorb an unexpected medical crisis without going into debt. You can walk away from a toxic job without waiting for another offer. You can turn down a bad contract because you simply do not need it. That is the feeling every luxury advertisement promises, but can never actually deliver. Someone making car payments on a luxury vehicle makes every career decision from a position of fear. They cannot quit because they need next month's payment. They cannot negotiate hard because they cannot afford to lose the income. They cannot fire a difficult client because the cash flow won't allow it. The person who has nothing to prove carries none of those constraints. They negotiate from strength, not from desperation. And in today's world, looking wealthy carries a new category of risk that previous generations never faced. According to a Javelin strategy and research report released in 2025, Americans lost a combined $47 billion to identity fraud and scams in 2024, up $4 billion from the year before. Impersonation scams alone surged 148% in a single year, according to the Identity Theft Resource Center. Criminals are no longer relying on crude tactics. They use voice cloning technology, build profiles from social media activity, and construct highly targeted attack scenarios aimed specifically at people who appear to have something worth taking. A 2024 Deloitte report revealed that 43% of family offices globally experienced at least one cyber attack in the previous 2 years. In North America, that number climbed to 57%. A separate study from Experian and the Department of Justice found that affluent individuals are 43% more likely to experience identity theft compared to the general population. Cybercrime losses across North America reached $16.5 billion in 2024 alone, a 33% increase over the prior year. Projecting wealth publicly does not only invite admiration, it invites threats you cannot see. The quietly wealthy have none of that exposure. No public signals for an attacker to build a profile around. No social media posts showing off a yacht to provide intelligence. No expensive car in the driveway announcing your financial position to anyone who drives past. Invisibility is the cheapest and most effective shield available. Beyond security risk, the social cost of looking wealthy accumulates in ways most people never track. When you show up to a group dinner in a luxury car, nobody says anything out loud, but everyone recalibrates internally. This person can probably cover more. When you wear designer clothes to a client meeting, they do not mention it, but the quote will be different. When you move into a more expensive neighborhood, the spending baseline of everyone around you quietly begins pulling your own expectations upward. Over time, those costs stop feeling like luxuries. They become the new normal, and that new normal quietly consumes most of the wealth you could have been building. Social comparison research confirms this. Status does not exist in a vacuum. It only means something relative to others. The moment you enter a high-status competition environment, you have accepted its rules. The only winning move is to not play the game. The quietly wealthy hold an advantage that rarely gets discussed. They maintain broader, more genuine relationships. When you drive an ordinary car and dress without signals, no one treats you differently because of your money. Your friendships are built on character, not financial distance. Colleagues have nothing to envy. Clients have no reason to resent your fees. That is a form of freedom that cannot be purchased directly, but it is worth more than most people realize. Within families, this dynamic becomes even more delicate. Research on the financial behavior of children from wealthy households shows that kids who grow up knowing their family is rich tend to work less hard and accumulate less on their own as adults. The expectation of inheritance quietly replaces the drive to build. Children who grow up in quietly wealthy households, where nothing on the surface signals exceptional resources, have no choice but to rely on their own abilities. That process is what actually prepares them for real life. The quiet luxury trend, gaining serious momentum over the past 2 years, is not simply a fashion cycle. Bain & Company's 2024 Global Luxury Report documented a clear shift. Affluent consumers are increasingly prioritizing durability, craftsmanship, and material quality over loud branding and obvious status markers. McKinsey's 2024 Consumer Sentiment Survey found that more than 60% of high-income shoppers are now prioritizing quality over quantity in their purchasing decisions. This is not accidental. It is the behavior of a class that has accumulated enough to stop needing to prove anything. When you no longer need to prove anything, you start buying differently. You choose a jacket made from the best material available with no logo that anyone outside the conversation would recognize. You book a trip for the actual experience, not for the photograph. You choose a car for its reliability, not for the message it sends at a red light. And every one of those decisions frees up a portion of your income to flow back into your investment account, where it begins compounding quietly in the background. Imagine 2 people, same income around $200,000 a year, same starting point. The first person maintains discipline, setting aside 20% annually, $40,000 a year, invested at an average return of 7% after inflation. After 30 years, that portfolio approaches $3.7 million. The second person saves only 5%, around $10,000 a year, spending the rest to maintain a lifestyle that signals success. Over the same period, they accumulate roughly $900,000, not enough to retire comfortably, and with no margin of safety against the financial shocks that life eventually delivers to everyone. Both of them stand in the same parking lot, One drives a faded silver Camry. The other drives a gleaming German SUV. The first person can retire before 60, choose work based on meaning rather than salary, and give their children the freedom to pursue a career without being held hostage by financial need. The second person has a beautiful photo album, a wardrobe full of labels, and good stories about 5-star restaurants. Both made choices. Only one of them chose something that kept growing while they slept. What is the price you pay for all of those advantages? Some people will assume you have less than you do. Some will underestimate you. Some will look at a plain exterior and draw the wrong conclusion. That is not a cost. That is a feature. You never have to impress people who do not matter. And the people who actually matter in your life will stay for the right reasons. Ingvar Kamprad, the founder of IKEA and one of the wealthiest people on the planet for decades, was known for driving an old Volvo flying economy class and eating in the staff cafeteria alongside his employees, not because he could not afford otherwise, but because he understood that every dollar not spent on appearances was a dollar that continued serving his actual objectives. Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's partner for over 50 years, once said that what allowed him and Buffett to accumulate what they did was not intelligence or luck. It was the patience to do nothing when there was nothing worth doing, including spending money when there was no real reason to spend it. This is not a story about being cheap or depriving yourself of everything good in life. It is a story about awareness. What game are you playing with your money? If the game is display, you have handed control of your financial life to the people around you, because the standard of that game never stops rising. It only escalates. If the game is accumulation, you have placed yourself in the role of the decision maker, not the reactor. Truly wealthy people do not need the world to know they are wealthy. They already know, and that knowledge is enough to let them live on their own terms, walk into any negotiation from a position of strength, and tune out the noise of social pressure long enough for their money to do its work in silence. That faded silver Camry sitting in the corner of the parking lot is not a symbol of failure. It is evidence of a very deliberate choice, long-term freedom over short-term recognition. The person behind the wheel does not need anyone to understand that. Their investment account understands it just fine. Wealth is not something you wear. It is something you build in silence, protect through obscurity, and harvest when the time comes, while everyone around you is still making payments on their image. I'm Tommy, and I create clear, easy-to-follow animated videos that break down complex financial topics into simple, actionable steps. My goal is to help you take control of your finances without the boring lectures. Subscribe to the channel for weekly videos and start your journey toward financial freedom today.